All right, so this is our another focus on the users of Ceph. So we've got 6 panelists who have agreed to come up here and be asked some questions. So we're really grateful to have them. They all represent different organizations, and Dan and I are going to lead them or ask them some questions to understand what their decision was for choosing Ceph and how it fits into their organization. So, and again, I'm Laura from the Rados team, and you know Dan. Yep. I don't know if you want to say anything else. But we'd like to also introduce the panelists. So perhaps we want to start over on that side.
Yep.
Hey, I'm Matt Vandermeulen from DigitalOcean. I'm a senior software engineer. We've been running DHO with Ceph for many years now, starting with Block, now with Object. And be excited to talk about it today.
Hi, my name is Sergio. I work for Workday. We've been using Ceph since 2013. I think probably Giant release was the first one that we actually deployed properly. So our use cases are mostly block, but also object and block.
Hello, I'm Jinmyeong, and currently working for Line a little bit more than 5 years, and our infrastructure department provides a private cloud system for our software engineers, and our team, which is cloud storage team, provides 3 types of storage products in the cloud system.
Hi, I'm Josh Hoblitt. I'm with the Vera C. Rubin Observatory. We've been using RIP-Ceph since 2020, and we use the full stack. We use block, we use object, and we use shared file system.
Hi, my name is Alison Peisker. I'm from Fermilab National Laboratory in the US. We've been using Ceph for about 2 years in production, and we mostly use the Ceph file system.
Good morning. Jeff Albert, Manager and Architect for Advanced Research Computing Infrastructure, University of Victoria. We've been running Ceph for, oh my heavens, almost 10 years now. We run the Arbutus Cloud, which is the largest research cloud in Canada. We've got about 25 petabytes of legacy Ceph on the floor, and we're just rolling out about 45 petabytes of new Ceph storage this year. We use the full stack as well, all 3 types. Researchers have come to love all of them, but object storage is growing in utilization faster than just about anything else. Ceph is absolutely the tool that underpins all of our storage infrastructure, and we have come to love it. I'll send this back down the line.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. So we'll get going with our first question. So the question is, could you share what were the key deciding factors that led your organization to use Ceph?
DigitalOcean needed a block product. We had compute for a very long time, but we wanted to bring a new product, and when we were evaluating things, Ceph was kind of an obvious choice for us. We wanted to control our own destiny. We wanted to make sure that we were owning our own hardware and still being able to use an open source product if we could. Ceph kind of checked a lot of these boxes for us, and it also paved the way for us to be able to bring in an object offering, a year or 2 later. It's been incredible value for us.
In the case of Workday, Ceph started really at the very beginning of our private cloud with OpenStack. So Ceph was the obvious choice to support the OpenStack deployments. And then from there, I guess what really made it for us is the flexibility to have both block and objects, and have different use cases along the way. And now our main use cases is more like database backups, very, very large database backups on block. And the flexibility, to deploy your different clusters, use different hardware, and customize your solution, that's really what drove us for us.
For Line, our company using OpenStack to provide our private cloud system, so it is quite obvious for us to choose Ceph. And also, we can provide 3 types of storage products based on a single code base, which is Ceph. So it is one of the biggest advantages to us.
We started with Ceph basically because of Kubernetes. We'd had a lot of success deploying services onto Kubernetes on public cloud, and we made the decision that we wanted to start using Kubernetes on premises and even deploying components of the observatory control system onto it. And that led us the need to have block. And so that's how we started out. That's how we came to Rook Ceph, and it started out just as block. And the use sort of grew over time. Well, Ceph is already in the door, and now we need some shared file system. Well, we actually had some other stuff in-house, but it turned out that Ceph worked well enough for us, so then it became that. And then we needed a lot of object store. And in fact, object store is now our biggest workload in terms of bytes. And it has allowed us to essentially consolidate down to almost completely just Rook Ceph for all of our storage needs. It's been a huge win in terms of our total cost of ownership and knowledge base that we can focus on just one stack.
For us, we needed a file system to replace a proprietary network attached storage system that was reaching its end of life. So, and since other institutions in the physics community were using Ceph, we figured it would work well for our purposes as well. And since we're focused on open science, the open source nature of Ceph was something we're also trying to move more towards using. And then, although we're not using object or block storage in production right now, we're already starting to think of future use cases for both of those, and Ceph is an obvious choice since it provides all three.
Yeah, so much the same as the other scientific folks here, and I think a lot of us have been in this same position. Open leads to open, so we've been an OpenStack user, we're a Kubernetes deployer at a relatively large scale as well. And so looking down the line at what storage options are available, of course, Ceph seems like an obvious choice. But our whole proposition as a team in terms of trying to offer research infrastructure at large scale is essentially that there will never be enough money to offer the scale of resources that are required for the researchers who are asking for them. So we have to stretch our dollars as far as we possibly can, and our model for that has always been open software, commodity hardware, and the expertise of our team. A tool like Ceph gives us the ability to extend that model as big as we want to go. So we chose that intentionally and specifically. When we started with Arbutus Cloud, it was always Ceph. It's been Ceph the whole time. And as Ceph has gained features and abilities, we've just added those in. And generally, researchers have been kind of astonished that, oh, you can have that? Yeah, you can have that. Because those tools are just so accessible to them. So being able to take that open element and whatever equipment we can bring to the floor, because again, we're getting new granted equipment as we go all the time, contributed systems. We need to be able to bring those into the fold and have them immediately available in a common infrastructure to people through a common interface. Well, that's Ceph through and through. So that has definitely driven our choice there.
Great. I'll ask the next question. I mean, we're going to zoom in on that open part. I guess we're curious about how important was the open source nature of Ceph when you made the decision, and then how maybe did it bring some surprising value or continues to bring value to your organization?
DigitalOcean has always loved open source. We have a lot of open source projects that we give back, and we consume a lot of open source ourselves. There's more than just the software too. When you find Ceph's not just a library on GitHub or something. It's a giant open source product. It's the meetings. Many of the meetings are open source, like the performance meeting every week. I've never seen that in another open source community. Like that's a great way for us to give feedback upstream and find things that we can help with, find things that other folks in this room might be struggling with, and see how we can work with it. It's not just an open source project. The community is huge for us.
Yeah, definitely. This community is very important, and we do find a lot of sharing knowledge, and the opportunity that you have to speak to people and ask for random questions. That's always great. The opportunity to contribute, we had in the past made some contributions to features that we did need, but it weren't there. So having that was definitely at some point in our journey was a crucial part of sticking to Ceph and being able to adapt the products to our needs. So I would say that's very important for us.
Yes, obviously, as two panelists previously said, community is the most a huge value to us, because when we face some issues, we can search some community history or mailing list or tracker, so we can find and fix our issues very easily. Not very easily, actually. But anyway, it is open source and it is fully customizable, so we can provide some extended APIs to our software engineers in our company. So it is one of the biggest value to us.
To directly answer the question, it's the most important consideration. Our project is an open source project. All of our scientific pipeline code is open source. So when we're looking and evaluating a solution, it's the very first question: is it open source? Then we start to consider, does it have a healthy community? Is there support available? Is there support available from more than one vendor? Because we've been bitten by single source solutions for both hardware and software. We want to go into a community that's open and healthy and vibrant, and Ceph checked all of those boxes for us.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what you just said. Being a science institution, we support like open access to science and data and everything, so it makes sense to stick with the open source solution. And of course, like the fact that it has such a strong community is a huge plus. And this also allows us to avoid vendor lock-in, since some of these experiments run for years and years. And then we haven't actually contributed to the code yet, but we could if we wanted to, and if we need a new feature. And it's nice to be able to look at the code sometimes.
Yeah, so again, echoing very much what our academic colleagues have said. I mean, that's what drives academic research is open source and open access to information. So certainly that aligns with our values. Pragmatically, it just makes sense to be able to use a product that you can see all the way through. I think there's a real challenge when you drive performance and scale at the levels that we tend to. Researchers will generally want to know how fast can it go, and they will try to push it that way. You're going to hit the weird edge case bugs. And so being able to observe the source all the way down, and then to be able to get into conversation directly with the smartest, the most informed people in the world about your particular use case, because they're in the community with us, that makes a huge difference to us. So having access to that entire stack, both the source itself and the vendor support and the community that provide that environment for us, makes just a lot of sense operationally, architecturally. So that's why we choose it.
Awesome. So yeah, you mentioned challenges. So speaking on challenges, what challenges or surprises did you experience when integrating Ceph with your organization or infrastructure?
So integration meant a lot of things for us. We started very early, and as early adopters, there weren't as many bells and whistles as there are today. So beyond things like observability, there continues to be like a capacity management problem, but that's not Ceph. That's us trying to figure that out. One of the very interesting things was we designed the Spaces product for our object storage, and we released it with a use case in mind, and then we had users, and they sent us a whole new set of use cases every day, and it really kind of highlighted making sure that we know what the requirements are before we try to build a solution for a thing we think we need. It's an interesting problem to try to solve, because an S3 client can use an S3 backend however it wants, and we have to be able to support that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess we've also had many challenges over the years. We had some scary ones, like we had a few years ago we hit a kernel bug in the RBD that was causing my SQL servers to crash, and that was pretty scary because we kind of derailed the beginning of the project. But I think again, having the support from the community, and also we had a partnership at that time with Red Hat and IBM today, and having that was one of the key things to the continuation of our journey. Yeah, and I guess we had also questions of hardware and costs and use cases that are continues to be a challenge today.
Yes, for Line, unfortunately, we're facing some technical issues. For example, we faced RockStave issues in RSW, And last year, Ceph PolyCon, I'm here with one of our team members, Hongjun, and he gave presentation about the issues and how we fixed those issues. And currently, we're facing some scalability issues, and I really want to share this year presentation, which is our presentation. And we are starting very early version, like Luminous or previous version. So back then, there's not much user metrics or user logs because we are providing 3 storage products in our private cloud system. And when you provide products in cloud system, you need to provide extra functions and features to users. But there's nothing like those features in Ceph, so we need to integrate and develop those kind of features by ourselves. And that was one of the biggest issues to us.
I think the biggest challenge that we've had is dealing with applications on block that feel that it's reasonable to call f-sync like every 3 milliseconds. You know who you are. And so we've had to actually not use Ceph block in a few cases for that. We have Kubernetes nodes that we pass through local storage directly into some of the pods so that we can get a few 100,000 IOPS out of the local NVMEs and completely bypass it. It makes me unhappy because those nodes then become special snowflakes, and it completely violates my model of how I want to operate and not have to get up in the middle of the night when something dies. But that's sort of a combination we've had to make. We've had a couple of other small issues. We had a particular workload that did a lot of linking and unlinking of files that was triggering an MDS bug occasionally. That workload has gone away. It migrated to Object Store, and we've had no problems with RGW with it. We have an occasional issue where Ganesha for NFS just blocks up, and I don't know why. Kill the pod, comes back, happens about once a month. And then we've had some regressions. Like right now, we haven't migrated to Squid yet because there is a regression in, I think, bucket policy. It's fixed, but I don't know if it's a part of a point release yet. So I wouldn't say that we've had serious issues. I mean, the level of noise is pretty low. I'd say overall, the upgrade story for Ceph has been fantastic, especially run through Rook. We just tell Rook what version we want to run and come back a couple hours later, and magically everything's updated. The system never went down. So I'd say all in all, it's been really positive, but there's still kind of these small nagging issues.
For us, I think we were kind of surprised by the lack of challenges that we faced when incorporating Ceph. It sounded like a big, scary thing, and we weren't quite sure what we were doing, but it ended up being really easy to deploy it with Ceph ADM. And of course, there were a few bugs that we had to work through, and there were some software bugs, but the Ceph developers have addressed some of those, even though we didn't specifically point them out. They affect everyone equally. And so it's actually worked quite well for us.
Yeah, I guess I would sort of, again, just collect some of that together. We've had tremendous success deploying Ceph, almost to the extent that it let us build faster than we could maintain, to some extent. So we've got quite a large Ceph estate at this point, and we're now in the process of doing a greenfield build of our new Ceph deployment. Wow, you can build a lot of nodes really fast, you can deploy a lot of storage really fast and hand it out to users. Now you got to run that. And that's, again, the sort of lack of issues have almost been a challenge in their own way because Ceph has been so reliable for us. We have never really had an issue of it being unavailable in that sense. From the user's perspective, they don't really know it exists and consider it infallible. And so they will do things. You're lucky they're only doing it to you on block, but we get it on CephFS a lot. People wanting to do f-syncs every eighth of a second. Because they're unaware of the level of abstraction behind the software. And that's good. That's what we want. But it does require us to do a bit of expectation management of, no, you're not actually writing to a file system on a disk on your system. You're going through several layers of network indirection to get there. So managing those expectations. And then just keeping abreast of the scale of the software and the changes that are coming in it. There's a lot that's happening. We need to stay on top of it. We need to stay in a current release. And there's just a lot of work involved in that at the scale that we're operating. So, are these challenges? I mean, they're challenges caused in some ways by the strengths of the product, but yes.
Awesome. So yeah, we saw various plots this morning making us feel good that we're big and we're popular and the community is huge, right? But I think we all know we want to get even bigger on the global scale. So from your experience, maybe your networks or things, what can we do in the Ceph project to attract new organizations, new users, new contributors to Ceph?
That's an interesting question. Trying to pull our heads out of the weeds I've been in Ceph for a very, very long time, and trying to think of it as a new user, what are the things we don't celebrate as much as maybe we could that are very unique to Ceph? And I think the self-healing is huge, right? I don't know if we celebrate that enough. Along with, as another panelist said, upgrades are super easy. And it's not just that they're easy, it's that you can do it 2 versions back. That's very important to an organization like DigitalOcean, who doesn't move quite that fast. We have a lot of things to do, and keeping on top of upgrades can be difficult. So jumping from Pacific to Reef is a lot easier than trying to take every major release.
Yeah, I think the upgrade story has definitely improved quite a lot recently. We were stuck in what it was Red Hat Ceph 4 for a very long time because it was kind of difficult, the transition. Then we eventually got to Ceph 5, and now we're Ceph 7, so we did a big jump. So that's definitely been a great success, improvements over the last few years. I think one of the things that I would touch for new users, probably, there's quite a few, but sorry, not quite a few, but there's a few important stories, and I think the hardware story is tricky for people coming into Ceph and to decide. Even for us, we are still, every time we have a new use case, we need to sit down and figure out what is the hardware that would suit this application. Trying to figure out, there's so many choices of components that you can throw into your solution, and they all have the cost, and trying to figure out which one is gonna be the most cost effective. So I think for people coming in, having that sort of, some sort of guidance would definitely help for them to adopt.
I think I can agree with him because there are lots of hardware choices, so it's very tricky to know what kind of hardware spec we need to choose. So if community can give some guidelines or recommendations about hardware options, it could be very helpful. And on the top of that, capacity planning is also a tricky part. So if any kind of guidelines can be given, it could be very helpful, I think. And also, absolutely, documentation is really helpful to newcomers because recently we tried to set kind of bucket traffic configurations, but there's no other guidelines about performance or extra memory usages triggered by those configurations. So we need to benchmark or performance test by ourselves. So if community can give some metrics or test results about some configurations like cache size or memory size, it could be very helpful.
I think actually I would echo that capacity planning was a tricky part. Okay, I go buy a bunch of hardware and what's it gonna do? The only way to do is really buy the hardware first, then do testing. So I think having some guidelines out there of saying this configuration will yield this, and maybe have a couple of examples in the documentation. I think also some of the suggested parameters in the documentation was a little out of date. I think for new users, I would recommend the path that I went on, and that was to come in through Rook, because Rook allowed me to get up and running without having to understand a lot of the low-level details about Ceph, and that made it easy to incrementally get started. I can get something going on day 0 without having to put, days or weeks into trying to understand the low-level architecture of Ceph, and then I can kind of incrementally learn that over time. That was a really helpful path for me. I had actually been aware of Ceph for a very long time. I remember going to talks from Sage about Ceph in the early days, so more than a decade ago. So it had been on my radar. I was aware of it. I think I'd even compiled it from source and fiddled with it a couple of times, but had never really been on my radar as something to deploy because it just seemed so daunting to get going. I'm going to adopt that entire stack, and now I have to become a dedicated Ceph administrator to get going with it. Whereas with Rook, you can just install it and you're up and running in literally minutes.
Yeah, I think I'd also agree with a lot of the things that the other panelists have said. I would say maybe if Ceph emphasizes that it is fairly easy to get something up and going. I mean, we use Ceph ADM instead of Rook, but it was also quite easy to get something up and going. Emphasizing that it is fairly straightforward to do, I think would help. And also along the documentation lines, there is a lot of documentation out there, but it's more just a lot of like, it tells you what instead of how. And I think like if they had more information about like how to do all of these different things, that would make it easier to get up and going with it.
Yeah, one thing that we found in terms of deploying it to a large community where we're not necessarily sitting right next to those people, they're across the country, in some cases around the world, the storage consumer experience is one that is maybe a little less polished than even the deployer experience, which is not usually the way that it goes for this kind of software. So folks are, I think, really attached to the idea of object storage as being S3. Well, it's S3 compatible, right? So having a bit more documentation, a bit more easy on path for people who are starting into that space for how Ceph is its own thing in object storage, in CephFS, where the client is a bit different than you might encounter. It's not quite the same pattern as NFS. Yes, you can do that, but getting people accustomed to the ways in which Ceph is unique. And I think maybe advertising those in a positive way. It's a good thing that Ceph is unique in these ways, but we need to let folks know what that is so they're not surprised when they get there. I think that could help a lot.
Absolutely. And the final question, I'll ask a final question, and then it looks like we'll have some time at the end, and we'll hopefully have some questions from the audience or some time for Q&A. So think about what you'd like to ask the panelists. So the final prepared question. Based on your experience, what advice would you give to other decision makers who are considering Ceph for their storage needs?
I think I'd say start small. Build a small proof of concept, even if it's a single node, even if it's just a couple VMs or something. It might sound a little silly, but getting your hands on and just getting a little bit of experience is incredibly helpful. Understanding your workload might help get kind of a shape for what your hardware requirements might be, but like some of the other panelists have said, it's hard to know until you kind of put it out there a little bit and do a bit of testing. And I also kind of think that if a decision maker is going to have to decide between some vendored solutions, maybe some other open source solutions, Ceph is going to be in that mix. You kind of look at Ceph as an investment. You're investing in your own business and your own ownership into the solution. Every bug you encounter and you fix, that's experience that your team builds, and that's something to kind of think about as you move forward. It's not just like a one and done kind of thing. You're going to run into a problem and you're going to become your own subject matter experts. And personally, I think that's an incredible advantage.
Yeah, for sure. The ability to start small and play around, that's great. One of the great things of Ceph, you can test your own ideas. Now, one of the things that I would say for us has been the most beneficial for us is put yourself on your user's shoes, right? So go and have a look, what are they doing with the storage that you're giving, right? For example, in one of the cases, what is our largest use case today for backups on RBG, we initially just gave access to a bunch of DBAs and create your own volumes, write your backups, and don't, leave me alone. But then you start to realize what they are doing. They are not really taking advantage of the virtualization that Ceph is giving them. So they are treating the RBD volume as just like a physical device, and that has its own challenges. And then once you go and talk to them and see what they're doing, and you realize actually, instead of creating a large volume and writing and rewriting backups over the same file system over and over again. You can just create a volume, write your backup, and disconnect and forget about that volume, because then you don't have to clean up after. Your use case becomes a lot easier to deal with. So putting yourself on your user's shoes and seeing what they're doing, it's one of the very most important things to do.
First of all, I think the decision makers should specify their needs and requirements about their performance or specs, and they need to carefully check whether the SAP is their right or proper choice for them. And I think they need to consider they might have to put more effort than they think to integrate SAP to their service or infrastructure. For example, we need to build our own small service to maintain our lots of SAP clusters, because there's always hardware fault and some performance issues, but we are service to our end users. We have to keep our clusters reliable and stable. So I think they need to consider this too.
I think I would suggest that people think up front about the requirements really hard, where they fall in terms of the CAP theorem. What do you care about? My organization, we care about consistency really more than anything else. I would suggest thinking about the blast radius. When something goes wrong, how bad is it going to go wrong, and how do you recover from it? To think about what your exit strategy is. So is this going to be something that's going to be long-lived, or you need a decade out of it? Are you going to be cycling hardware in and out of it? What's your total life cycle going to be? And what's your exit strategy? Are you going to just keep it going forever organically, or are you going to have a forklift replacement where you bring in a whole new system and copy data over? How are you going to migrate that data over? Do you have to shard your data across multiple clusters? Think about that. The other big piece of advice I would have is to have a development environment. So we actually have 5 small clusters that we use for dev tests. For any time there's a change that needs to be made, it runs through one of those clusters. And so if we need to update Ceph, we try that first and see if anything goes horribly wrong, for example. And that has been hugely helpful for us in preventing problems from propagating out into our production environment.
Yes, the test environment has been very helpful for us as well in testing new things we want to try or the newer releases. I would also say, to people looking into this, that it's not as scary as it looks, and to just try spinning up a test cluster, and then you can quickly try some use cases. And for us, we just briefly tested a few use cases from our scientific users, and we found that it performed just as well as our old system that we were migrating off of, even though our hardware that we were using in our test system was quite old at the time. So we figured it would be good enough for the use case there. And then even once we got it up into production, there were a lot of small little tweaks that you can make while it's up and running to make sure that it's working as well as we want it to.
Yeah, again, these are all the common experiences that I think that folks have had. Strong agree on the dev cluster. Having a dev cluster has helped a lot. In terms of speaking to decision makers, I think the question always has to be, what do you value? In our landscape, the thing that we value most of all is flexibility, because things change. Workloads change. The world is changing. Budgets are changing. Everything changes over the life of your system. You're right. Forward planning is a big part of that, but you need to be able to adapt. So if you're making a plan that's based on a single product that you don't have any insight into or control over, you're going to have a tough time in the long run, probably. Being able to be flexible about the hardware we run on, being able to be flexible how we deploy the software, changing things on the fly, applying changes in dev and then pushing them into prod, and having control over that whole process. To me, that's the deep value of Ceph and of all open infrastructure software. So I would encourage always decision makers to think about, where is the value that you're going to get from this infrastructure? Is it coming from a product? Is it coming from a partner? Is it coming from your team? For us, it's always coming from our team, and so having the best access into that software that we can is what we do.
Looks like Laura's prediction was correct. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. But does anybody have a question? I just want to remind who's up here, because this is a very selective panel. We're very privileged. We have universities involved in building sovereign infrastructures. This is like very serious stuff, right? We have the world's preeminent scientific labs involved in global collaboration, so this is also serious. Very serious enterprises building their businesses with the foundation on Ceph, and cloud providers then building for everyone. So now's your chance. This is serious business. Ask them how they're succeeding. Let's have a question, please. Okay, if you say, shout your question and we'll repeat it for the audience. Yeah.
Sure. This is Alex from IBM. If you have the power to snap your fingers and change whatever you want from Ceph, what would you like to change?
Okay, so the question was, if you had the power, it's Alex from IBM, if you have the power to snap your fingers and change one thing in Ceph, what would it be?
One mic, I can just hand it over to
Sure.
One mic.
Yeah. And let's get 3 responses.
I want to repeat your question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, well, as mentioned, if you have the power to snap your fingers and change whatever you would like to change in Ceph, what would it be?
Anybody feel free to answer.
Yeah, anyone. We don't have to go through them all. I mean, just anyone. Volunteer if you want.
I mean, DigitalOcean, I represent a cloud provider. If I could snap my fingers, performance more always. Crimson could be amazing and in my hands right now, and I'd be like, okay, what's next, right? There's never going to be enough. Maybe better performance under density, but as you start running into 85, 90% on a disk, that starts getting scary, and for a whole plethora of reasons. Those are the first 2 things that kind of come to mind.
Tricky question. If I could just do this, I could ask for a lot of things, but of course there's limits to everything you ask. I suppose for us, one of the probably most, I'd say, tricky things for us now in terms of scalability, how erasure coding is performing for us in this use case. If we can get, faster, and I've heard there's more, faster erasure coding coming. I know there's things that we need to look at. That would probably be my choice at the moment.
I guess I want to say this: with great power comes great responsibility, and you did show that responsibility in choosing. We already have that delivered, so I think you'll be very happy with the latest release coming up.
Okay, it's a very interesting question, but I think yes, scalability issue is very tricky, and also we're few thousands of OSDs clusters, and there's a bunch of their clusters, so it's not easy to upgrade because it's production level. We need to test new version, and we need to QA the new version. So maybe we can do finger snap to upgrade our cluster. It could be very happy.
I think my biggest wish would be somehow for block performance for databases that insist on doing these crazy f-syncs for their write-ahead logs and whatnot would be better. And I don't know exactly how to get there. I'd probably be willing to give up some consistency to gain some performance. If I had a knob, I might use it. I'd have to think real hard about it. But yeah, that'd be my biggest wish, is to make all of my local storage NVMEs to go away and have 100% of my storage be on Ceph.
This is a hard question for me because we do have a smaller Ceph cluster for the moment, and it's been quite performant enough. None of our users have complained about the performance so far. Maybe I would like to see some more information about how you can fix things when they break, some more troubleshooting, just in case these things happen, just to plan for in case any problems come up.
Yeah, so I'll try to answer this question in a relevant way to what's happening for our team right now. I will say, as soon as they put the manager title on me, I became technically inept, so I'll probably get lots of this wrong, and I apologize. The network model for Ceph has always been a bit interesting for us. The need to directly connect to OSDs from clients, especially for CephFS, has always been interesting for us. Operating an OpenStack cluster with VMs, those folks need to talk directly to OSDs. That sometimes has been a challenge, so if I could snap my fingers and solve that problem without getting the bottleneck of a gateway? Yeah. So sort of the longer answer to that is actually dual stack support for IPv4 and IPv6 so that we could migrate from one to the other and get around that network model issue that's currently challenging for us. I'd pick that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, panelists, for giving us your time and for answering all the questions. We really value you for coming. So give everybody a hand. And thank you very much.
Yeah, I think, again, I want to echo what Laura just said. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on stage. I know it takes effort and courage, and I also appreciate the feedback, though I have to say you've all been very nice. So I think in the hallways, maybe give us that criticism that's hidden somewhere. And for all of you, with this, we end the keynotes for today. And after this, we are going to have presentations and sessions, and we have a break before that. So enjoy some snacks and coffee and get energized for the rest of the day. Thank you so much.